All right. Thank you, everybody. I call this meeting of the VEHI Board to order. It's June 17th at 3:04 p.m. Thank you, Andrew, for joining. We're just getting started. First item is to review and adopt the agenda. Let me bring it up here. My one comment is based on some discussion I've had, my suggestion is we swap 10 and 11. Let Lance and I give you the update on the conversation with committee chairs, and then we'll talk about that subcommittee because I think this item informs this discussion. So I'm going to move to swap 10 and 11. I have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Suzanne. Any other proposals or questions about the agenda? Can I have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Lisa. Second, Cheryl. Thank you. Any discussion? All approved, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to public comment. Any members of the public who want to speak? Hi, Shelley. Welcome.
There you go.
Is it okay to just start talking?
Sure, go ahead.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Shelley Wilson, and I'm a VEHI member. And I realize the public comment portion of today's meeting is very short. I tend to be a little long-winded, so I'm going to try to be succinct. I am joining the meeting today to participate in public comment on the discussion on the agenda for today about covering GLP-1 medication for VEHI members. I became aware of the discussion here, and I'm not surprised that it's a topic for you all to be grappling with in terms of providing this coverage to members. I just want to say, in case I get a little emotional, this is a very charged topic for me, as the condition of obesity associated with GLP-1s is, you know, something that is a struggle for many of your members. And it's a pretty emotional topic to talk about, especially with a group of strangers. So I'm going to try to be real tough and get my point across and let you guys get down to business. But I watched the board member meeting from last month, and I appreciated everybody's thoughtful discussion about the topic of whether or not to continue covering this notably very expensive medication for VEHI members. I've been a VEHI member since 2002, and you know, for around 23 years. I've been a public school employee, first as a teacher, special education teacher, and now special education administrator and administrator. I'm very grateful for the high quality healthcare that VEHI has provided me throughout my entire career as an educator in Vermont. I understand that the world of healthcare is very complicated, and you were all talking about the bill that was, you know, passed by the legislature yesterday. Unfortunately, healthcare was not healthcare, and those complicated cost drivers were not discussed as part of that package, which is, you know, some of the work that I know you all grapple with as you serve in your roles on this board. So I just want to preface my comments by acknowledging that I know this is a very complicated issue. That's not going to be solved at the state level. There's federal implications. That being said, there are many members who, like myself, who have grappled with a lifetime of metabolic challenges, whether it's the cards we were dealt genetically. I know that people have very differing opinions on why people struggle with obesity. I will tell you that my personal first-degree family history is a cornucopia of things that will kill me, such as heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. All conditions that being obese will exacerbate. As mentioned in last month's discussion, the GLP-1 meds have come on fast and furious. They were developed primarily for, people with diabetes. Thankfully, I am not a person with diabetes, and I credit that to being able to be treated with GLP-1 medication for my condition. The benefits of the medication, I'm sure everybody in this Zoom meeting probably knows somebody by now who is being treated in this way. I can tell you that I am not one of the people. I'm not trying to fit into a dress for a wedding. I'm not trying to, look good for dating sites or whatever. I'm a 51-year-old woman who's trying to extend and enrich her physical health so that I can live a long and healthy life. I am not one of the people who takes the meds and loses 50 pounds in the blink of an eye. I know those stories are out there on the internet, and that is not me. It's been almost 2 years of a very slow and steady treatment plan that I have engaged in with a nutritionist, a weight and wellness specialist, and a therapist. And so I'm here to sort of very publicly, and very uncomfortably share that story with you all, so that you can know how important continued coverage of this medication is to your members. I didn't have time to rally more troops to come and speak, and I know I've probably run through my 5 minutes already, but I just want to emphasize as much as I can how life-changing treatment is for people who suffer. And again, I know you're all strangers, but, I just had blood work done. Every time I've ever had blood work as an adult, I dread the results. And as a result of my almost 2 years of treatment, my body mass index, which is that awful number that tells you how fat you are, I've reduced that number by 10 points. My triglycerides have dropped by 45%. My total cholesterol is down almost 20%. I wept when I got my metabolic results from my doctor because I was so grateful, because everything I had been, the difference that these drugs make, at least for me, is that you can do all the right things. I'm a very smart person. I do a lot of high-level work in my job and in my family and in my life. But when you have a metabolic makeup that is always working against you, for whatever reason, the meds make all the things that you are supposed to do actually work. I go to a 7:30 exercise class now. My life has changed in ways that, I could sit here and tell you all my personal stuff, and no one wants to hear that go on and on. I hope that there are other options that might be available to the board beyond cutting off access to GLPs altogether. I heard very clearly in last month's meeting, Blue Cross in Vermont as an entity has decided to end coverage for January 1 of 2026. And I don't know if there are any other options besides a total removal of coverage. For example, I know that I have 4 plans to choose from every year, And is there an option of providing one of the 4 plans with this type of coverage so that members like myself can make those choices around if I need to continue treatment, right, with a certain medication, if it is available as an offered benefit in one of the packages. I wonder if that is something that could be considered. I don't know the ins and outs of that. Additionally, another point I was hoping to bring up is within, currently now I have the gold CDHP plan, which is probably the one most members have. I wonder if there are options within the plans themselves to have some sort of rider or option where if you are being treated with one of these medications, whether it's for diabetes or for someone with comorbidities, I didn't feel like I needed to share all those with you, but are there financial tiers that could be explored instead of just a total withdrawal of coverage? I will let you know, before the medication was approved on the formulary, it was a struggle to obtain the medication, and I did pay out of pocket, which was a choice that I made in order to, get healthy. And I don't, someone in this meeting, it might have been Mark, not to call you out, Mark, I really just appreciated a comment that was made where somebody said, this might not be a decision that's forever. And I'm a realist. I know things are dire out there. I do appreciate that being surfaced because,
Hey, Shelley, I'm sorry. We're like
Wrap it
10
up.
minutes in. Can you
Yep.
wrap it up, please?
Yep. I just wanted to say thank you for making that comment because these meds aren't going away. There's a million clinical trials coming out with different versions. And so thank you for your time. I apologize for going over. And I will probably follow my comments up with a written email with some references to some studies and resources that may or may not be useful, but at least I can say that I said my piece. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. And public comment is not a time for dialogue, but I know I was on a board once that allowed for reflections by board members. So if any board member wants to reflect on the public comment, they're welcome to do so.
So Mike, if I may, just for a second, and Shelley, I appreciate you coming and sharing your story. I'm going to tell the board, I told Mike this already, if this comes to a vote, I will not be voting. I too am a GLP-1 user, and I very much, I'm just reflecting on what Shelley's saying, because my story, I same thing. I tell it pretty openly. People who work for me know it. I had a lap band or a gastric band. I was over 400 pounds, about 17 years ago. And I had to have my band taken out because the port had flipped. And so the only solution was to have it pulled out. I could not have gastric bypass in any way because I was too thin now. The minute they took it out, I gained 50 pounds. And so they put me on the GLPs to try and stem me going, because I was right at type 2 diabetes and was pulled away from that whole thing. I fully understand the implications and the cost things, but I just appreciate that, Shelley. I know how hard it is for people to come forward, but I just, I'm conflicted as a board member, so I appreciate hearing someone from the public. So.
Thank you, Andrew and Shelley, both for being vulnerable enough to share with us. Any other reflections by board members? Okay, we will move on. Shelley, you're welcome to stay on. All right. Next item is to approve the meeting minutes from May 20th. Any comments or questions about the minutes? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Cheryl. Seconded by Suzanne. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Motion passes unanimously.
Mike, I wasn't there, so I'm just abstaining from that vote, just so.
Okay,
Want to make sure.
thank you. All right. So next up are management updates, 15 minutes. So,
Bobby, Joe, and John, I guess I'll start, and by all means, please just jump in. Good to see all of you. I think the most significant management update topic is on page 6 and 7, as Bobby Joe noted in the agenda. It is a 2-page document that explains a recent event that Bobby Joe and I facilitated with Carrie Carmichael of Remedy Analytics. We interviewed representatives from 4 different pharmacy benefit manager entities. These are loosely referred to today as the next gen PBMs. They are challenging in the marketplace nationally the big 3 PBMs that generally control between 80 and 85% of the market. Caremark, Optum, which is Blue Cross's PBM at present, and so ours. And then Express Scripts, which used to be our PBM before Optum came into our life. And these 2 pages explain how we got to June 4th and that all-day event with Carrie Carmichael and Remedy's assistance. I can say confidently for both me and Bobby Joe, it was a long day, tiring at times, but also really illuminating a lot of really good conversation. And as you can see from the document, we believe there is good reason for VEHI to advance, with your blessing, a RFP to explore the viability of contracting with an alternative PBM or changing in some fashion the arrangement we have today with our PBM. Bobby, Joe, and I are of one mind that we are not ready, if you will, to pull the trigger on a change. It'd be a very big transition for us, something very different. It would be an arrangement that would be carved out of our service agreement with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Vermont. There would still be intersection of claims and such, but we would be fundamentally responsible for administering, managing with the new PBM the services and products that come with that kind of arrangement. That's not unusual in the ASO world, but it would be a departure for us. And we are always very sensitive, because of who we serve, about potential disruption in the lives of members and central offices. So there is a lot of administrative factors and issues to take into consideration. But in balance, we came away from the meeting on June 4th and from additional research we've done, believing that this is a responsible investigation via an RFP process. It's consistent with our fiduciary responsibilities as an ASO. And we think there's some tremendous potential here, both to continue to provide high quality services, and in some respects at an even higher level, and to see some very significant savings in costs. Next gen PBMs, at least the 4 we have interviewed, have proven themselves in the market to be capable of lowering costs and delivering high value care. And we will dive into much greater detail into all of that through an RFP process that would be facilitated by Remedy Analytics. Bobby Joe, anything I left out or that you want to add to?
No, I think you touched on everything. But to summarize, it's important for us to identify if there's cost savings while also identifying if there's any cost disruption for members, and then any administrative work that may come by uncoupling it from a health plan. So there's a few different arms of things that we need to look at, and certainly, we're not ready to say we're ready to move or anything. This is just really the first step at an exploratory process, or second step, I would say.
And I just want to reiterate, this would be a process we would do in collaboration with Remedy Analytics. They facilitate RFPs as a matter of course with their book of business. We have never exercised, if you will, our right to an RFP in our contract with Remedy, and that's about 10 years old now. This would be the first time we would do that, but Remedy feels very confident that they could help us through this process. And we should say, in gratitude, Carrie Carmichael played a very significant role in helping us set up these meetings and developing the agenda in collaboration with us. And when Bobby Joe and I approached her with this idea, we asked her pointedly, do you think it makes sense for us in this current environment and in the current contract we have at Optum that we should seriously explore this? And she said, yeah, I think it is time. And I think you can do it in a very judicious, measured way and give yourself the information you need to make an informed decision. Any questions for us or about the document that we shared with the agenda?
Cheryl?
Yeah, the question is along the lines of what Bobby Joe talked about, which is number 4 under the big picture list was, what is the impact on VEHI as a program in terms of administering it? I'm assuming it means we're doing this administration on our own. So what does that look like? I know what it's like dealing with file feeds. We do that with our HRA accounts. It's extremely time consuming. So just wondering about that. I think you answered why we were with Express Scripts at one time, why VEHI left, and I guess that's because Blue Cross.
Actually, VEHI really didn't leave Express Scripts. Blue Cross did.
Okay.
And we've always been under Blue Cross's RX umbrella. So if they change PBMs, we just follow suit.
Okay.
Yeah, Cheryl, in some of those situations that you're talking about, like file feeds and stuff, I mean, we would still have to rely on Blue Cross because those file feeds need to go back and forth between the vendors in order for the accumulators, on the Blue Cross end, they need to know where the other's at with deductibles and things like that. So it would be similar to what they have in place today, but it would be a different contract with Blue Cross as far as that admin on that is built in. So I suspect there'd be some shifting of costs one way back and forth, but it's what we have to identify.
I assume as part of the RFP would be that the system is compatible with Blue Cross Blue Shield, because again, dealing with file feeds and vendors we have vendors whose file feeds are not compatible. So then again, that ends up ending up with a lot of manual work. I would think
if we move, whatever PBM replaced Optum, its systems, as Bobby Joe alluded to, would be integrated with Blue Cross's claims feeds. And we would have a designated team of staffers at the new PBM, as well as our own designated account manager, to make sure that all these systems were working well. Each of the PBMs we interviewed is a major player in the field today. We were very selective about the ones that we interviewed, and we consulted with Remedy about which in the market have reputations of high quality service, competency, price savings, et cetera. And also, these new PBMs, they work with carriers like Blue Cross. So Blue Crosses in other states are not foreign to them. So they've done this with other carriers as well as Blue's affiliates. And the administration aspect of this is going to be a very important part of our deliberations. and of our RFP process. In fact, there was quite a bit of discussion with these folks on June 4th about their service model and how they identify what's important to us, what's unique to us. Bobby Joe did a nice job explaining central offices and how they work. It's a unique client base here. There's a lot of different kinds of central offices, small and large. We interrogated them about their experience working with unions and with school districts. So I anticipate if we move forward with an RFP, that aspect of the work will continue to be front and center for us.
Thanks.
Yeah, one thing that we thought was really important was having a long runway for this. We wouldn't want to try and, shove this through. I mean, technically they could do it mid-year next year. And I said, I don't think doing a mid-year change is a good idea. We've done mid-year changes things before and they've not gone well. So we would definitely want the long runway. And I would also suggest that we do, it would start on a January 1st effective date. Because swapping deductibles and things like that mid-year, that's just asking for trouble, if you ask me. So
Any
we
other
do,
questions
Other
or comments?
questions? I got some questions. I was waiting. Why Remedy? Has Remedy done this before? Helped other trusts to go to a next gen? Okay.
They have clients who are in next gen contractual arrangements. In fact, when we said to them, who would you recommend we talk to? And they said, oh, here's people who are serving our book of business. Here's others who have solid reputations like Capital RX. So they helped us set that list of interviewees.
Great. Thank you. What's the potential financial impact to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont for this, if we do this?
I don't know.
we don't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine there's going to be an impact, but I don't know what the true impact, or I can't quantify it for you, I guess.
No, that's fine, but there is going to be some. Okay. But
We suspect, which is probably, and they might need to adjust some of the, there might be savings on one end, but then they might have to increase admin in order to cover,
Right.
these new file feeds and things like that. So that's really all part of the process of identifying, because it always looks good at 30,000 feet, but then it's like, when you start kind of going down through, well, it's going to cost this or that, or we're going to have to make tough decisions about formularies or something, so certainly not anything, like we said, that we want to jump into moving forward, that we're ready to make any type of decision, but we at least want to do this work. We feel like it's a good alternative to a full-fledged RFP for the entire book, for the entire block, like the ASO. The potential savings to us was in the 15 to 20% range for our pharmacy, which is, those are pretty big numbers. So
15 to 20% of our pharmacy spend, which is about percentage-wise, how much of our claims?
what do we?
RX is 20% of our total spend.
Okay.
It's a fairly significant amount of savings if all the pieces fall into place the way we would like them to.
Okay. I want to be mindful of the impact of Blue Cross Blue Shield, but that's not our, obviously our fiduciary responsibility is to our members and our school boards and taxpayers, not to Blue Cross Blue Shield. So, but
And this is going to be open to them as well. So if they want to sharpen their pencils, while we're at it, that's up to them as well. And we don't know if Optum will come back with any different pricing, but we do have a suggested motion. If you're interested in
Yeah.
seeing that, I will put it in the chat.
And I thank you for that. And the other thing I want to say is, I've done a lot of, me personally, I think that the PBMs are one of the big drivers that increase healthcare costs across the nation
That is true.
and sucking money out of the system. So I love the ideas. The more reading I've done about these next gen PBMs, I really like that idea, and I trust them more than the big three. Cheryl?
So how do they generate savings? Where is the savings come from? Like, what are they doing that's resulting in a 15 to 20% savings over what we're doing now?
It's a variety of factors. It's unit costs. Sometimes they can get better costs on medications. It is a lower profit margin that they operate on than the big three. It's a combination of looking at different ways to do prior authorizations and utilization management. I'll give you one example. One of the folks that we interviewed shared a chart with us, or a graph, I can't remember which showed a patient who was on a GLP-1, as it turns out, and had filled a prescription for an extended period of time. And the plan had ended up paying over that period of time. And come to find out, the person had stopped taking the medication very early after the prescription had been made because of side effects. And yet the plan continued to generate the cost. And this PBM said to us, we have a way of structuring this prescription for high cost medications like GLP-1s to protect you from paying bills for particular medications that your members are no longer paying. And they all talk to us about prior authorization and different ways of structuring that so that members can get access to their meds, but also ensuring that there are protocols in place to make sure that that's functioning at kind of a higher level than it is today. So you can think about it in kind of it's a sort of constellation of measures that they take in order to reduce costs.
And I'd also say, if they're just really looking at how can we save our members, save them money, versus how can we generate profits. There's a great article, a scary article in the New York Times about the PBMs that it talks a little bit about the agreements that they have with pharmaceutical companies, and they're really incentivized not to save money for their members, but to generate. So I think if any information as you go forward on this, any information you can share with the board about how they function from themselves and from third parties, I think would be helpful, so that we're confident that we're making a good decision that has a financial benefit without having a negative health benefit for the employees.
Bobby Joe and I and Carrie met at the end of the day the next day, excuse me, with Jeff Hochberg, who's an independent pharmacist here, very knowledgeable guy about the RX world. And we're still in conversation with him about a joint VEHI independent pharmacist collaboration that could benefit both of us. And early on in the conversation, we said to him we had spent the day interviewing these next-gen PBMs. And he said to us, it is a very smart move for you to begin looking seriously at an alternative. And again, he wasn't saying you have to do it, but he said it's a very smart move, and sort of confirmed, I think, what we had felt at the end of June 4th after a long day of these conversations.
A lot of the bigger PBMs also own their own pharmacies, and they own their own manufacturing, and there's all these different, so they can keep referring to themselves, for different things. And there's just all these layers of somebody's making money on every layer. And these groups are really all about transparency. We have different things where there's, rebates and stuff, but it's all very secretive and nobody knows what it is. And they're very open about these things. So that we felt better about that too.
Thank you. I'm going to take a question from Andrew, and then we're running a little bit over. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, just real quick, because when I was reading through all that stuff, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding. And Bobby Joe said something that sparked it. Would members have to go to, could they still use any like CVS, Walgreens, whatever they wanted to, or would they have to go to specific vendors?
Our goal is to have the broadest possible network possible, like we do today. And part of the RFP process would involve a network analysis as well as a formulary analysis. What kind of medications are on their formulary? Are we permitted to add to that formulary? How does it change over time? And where can our members get access to their medications? How expansive are your networks? Is there going to be any problem in terms of getting access to the medications? I came away from the meetings, and Bobby Joe, correct me if you feel differently, thinking that obviously the network analysis is critical. We are definitely going to do that. But I came away thinking people are not going to have difficulty getting access to their medications with these new PBMs. But we would make sure of that in our RFP.
Yeah,
Good
they might
question.
have to do a little, boots on the ground, getting into all the corners of the state to make sure that they're,
Yeah.
in our network, but we were under the understanding that it would be easy for them to get into the network if they weren't.
And again, I say this to my family, everything's about me. Like I live in New Hampshire, right? So like but we have a lot of employees that live in other states, right? And so just thinking about, I know some folks who live in New York, right? And they from that side, like I just would want
Yeah,
us to
so
make sure that whatever we're asking these people to do, it's going to capture.
Yes.
Yeah, it's called it's a network disruption report, and it looks at every single pharmacy our members use, and it kicks out the ones that are not. So it's very specific to all VEHI members.
All right. Good discussion. Thank you, Bobby Joe and Mark, for starting the digging. I'll ask for someone to make the motion that's in chat. Who feels like reading?
I move to authorize the management team to initiate an RFP bidding project in collaboration with Remedy Analytics to investigate the potential advantages, cost savings, and operational implications of changing how it secures PBM services.
Thank you, Lance. Lisa will second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Oh, wait, Andrew, what did you raise your hand? Okay. Aye or nay?
I was late on the eye.
Okay. All right, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, guys, and look forward
Thank you all.
to more work on this going forward. All right, next up is legislative and Vermont Healthcare 911 updates.
This will be very quick. S-126, this year's healthcare omnibus bill with provisions around reference-based pricing, hospital global budgets, total cost of care targets, revitalizing primary and community-based care in Vermont. It passed the legislature, as you know. It has been signed by the governor. The same is true of H.266, which would cap hospital-administered medications at 120% of average sales price. It's a reference-based pricing system for a select category of medications. We estimate it would have saved us this year, had it been in place, roughly $11 million. That bill has also been signed into law. And I believe the same is true of H482, which expands the authority of the Green Mountain Care Board to apply its regulatory mandate to hospital networks as well as to individual hospitals. And this bill came with a lot of support from Blue Cross because it gives the Green Mountain Care Board the right to adjust hospital reimbursement rates if it believes that an insurance carrier is in fiscal trouble and needs that kind of support. These bills also expanded the staffing resources of the Green Mountain Care Board. There are other provisions to them, which in the interest of time, regulatorily speaking, I won't go into, but they signify a very significant sort of vote of confidence in the ability of the Green Mountain Care Board not only to carry out its present mission, but to expand that mission and to deepen regulatory oversight of the healthcare system. I will say in closing that these three bills together probably represent the greatest healthcare reform measures of the last 25 years. And if implemented well, they will be very positive, have a very positive impact for Vermonters, and should have a very positive impact for VEHI as well. There's a lot more work to come. The reference-based pricing for the hospitals has to go into effect in some fashion. We do not yet know what form it will take, but it would begin in FY27, which is next year's hospital budget cycle. So stay tuned. And with respect to Vermont Healthcare 911, I've been sending out our stat documents, as we call them, which reveals the depth of our research and what it reveals about the state of hospital reimbursements, especially at the University of Vermont Medical Center and more broadly with the UVM network. And it's frankly been shocking to me, and I shouldn't have been shocked after all these years, but I am, about the level of profit that the University of Vermont Medical Center in particular has earned at the expense of the commercial insurance market. It's really stunning. And the size of their unrestricted assets, which have grown tremendously over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, the same period of time when Blue Cross was suffering very serious declines in its reserve levels. So you can see this parallel with rising premiums across the commercial market, Blue Cross's fiscal solvency woes, and the increase in profits and assets and prices at the hospital level. The correlation's impossible to miss. And I'll simply say too that we've been having a lot of conversations with policymakers, and we have had face-to-face conversations with the network itself. So our research is being taken very seriously, has garnered a lot of respect, and we're going to continue with that work and continue advising policymakers as best we can and helping to shape the direction of healthcare reform so that commercial insurance becomes far more affordable than it is today. And that means really getting at the price conundrum. That's it for me.
Questions for Mark? My question, Mark, is around those 3 healthcare bills. I know Scott signed them. Did he say has he said anything about healthcare?
You know,
this
the governor
session?
has had a history of not talking about healthcare. And I say that respectfully. I'm not being pejorative. It's just an observation. He has tended to shy away from healthcare reform measures. He did speak in favor of One Care Vermont a few years ago, but he has tended to avoid the nitty-gritty, hard conversations around healthcare reform, regulation, addressing, again, the price issues, reference-based pricing, prescription drug affordability board. I think he has never felt that healthcare was a political winner for him. I think that's Mark H. speaking. And when asked recently about why he did not talk about healthcare costs in the context of his affordability agenda, he said something to the effect that, well, other people are dealing with this, his focus is elsewhere. And I think that's regrettable, especially in our world, but that's the political calculus he works with. And I am just grateful that he signed the bills, because that does say something very positive about his and his administration's understanding about the need to do something, even if it didn't take a leadership role.
Okay, thank you. Any other last questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Mark. All right, next agenda item, setting the annual meeting date and closing the membership books. So before we go into talking about that, Bobby Joe, can you just remind us around the timing of what we need to do when?
You mean well, there's a couple different things. So we have the annual meeting. In the past, it's always been in conjunction with the VSBA and VSA, I believe, meetings. They've taken place at Lake Maury in the past. When we normally set a date, we have to set a date and then set a date to close the books, which is about 10 days prior to. So that's what we'll be looking for today. Is that, but we have been talking about whether or not we wanted to kind of decouple it from the VSA, VSBA, and just have our own Zoom meeting that we could send out to all of our membership, and it wouldn't be this 15-minute little meeting, you know, so that was part of it. So I think we had looked at possibly November 14th as a date.
Yeah. Let me,
Like
if you don't mind,
this-
let me just talk to it a little bit. So
Yeah,
historically, we've done the pretty pro forma routine business meeting on like 7:30 or 8 a.m. of the VSBA conference. And it's very routine. Last year, there were some questions, but most years, like when I attended, it was nothing. It was just pro forma. What we talked about, the Lance and I and the leadership team when we were prepping for this meeting was to actually have a membership meeting that's a little more broad reaching and accessible, since it's not just school boards and superintendents that are stakeholders. With all of the increasing costs of healthcare and all the work that we're doing to try and bend that curve. We were talking about not doing the meeting, not doing the full membership meeting at the VSBA VSA conference, but instead doing it at a separate date sometime in mid-November. Doing a 30 to 60-minute meeting. Lot to figure out, but we would present, we'd have the official business where I don't know what they need to do. They need to I don't know, board meeting. I don't know what they have to vote on.
Nothing.
Nothing?
yeah, they
No.
approved the meeting minutes from before, they approved the membership list and something else.
So that's it. All right. Well, it's an opportunity for us to explain to them what we're doing, right? The initiatives that we're doing, what we're hoping to achieve. And also give them a chance to, you know, give our members a chance to make comments like we heard today. And you know, from the management team's historical knowledge, it hasn't been done like that. So I wanted, but never mind, you know, the details. I just wanted to take the temperature of the board, see if the board is interested in doing that, or whether they would prefer to stick with the historical norm of a quick meeting during the VSBA VSA conference. Suzanne?
I'm really in favor of doing the 30 to 60-minute meeting separately, primarily because we could use it as an opportunity, as people have already voiced, to talk about and express, you know, where we are and what we're doing, particularly if we are thinking about if a plan redesign happens, you know, soon, as we think it may. You know, we have things to talk about, and it's a good PR opportunity for us.
Who would be
I-
invited?
I agree.
Who
So-
would be invited? to
Yeah,
participate?
so it would be a public meeting, so anyone could attend. The way the voting is done during the meeting is that each district gets a vote. Is that correct? Or each SU? There's some way that,
Yeah,
right, Bobby Joe?
I think it's
Yeah.
broken down by district, right? They each get a
Yeah.
card. So if you're an SU, you still get 8 cards or 6 cards or.
But that's voting. And if we're not voting, I mean, absolutely, there could be a motion from the floor, because remember, this is a meeting of the members, right? So they could do motions from the floor. But in general, if, you know, there is a way to vote, but I think that, you know, who we invite, it could be school board members, it could be staff members, the employees, could be, you know, school board members who are not going to the VSBA conference. I think any stakeholder would be welcome to attend. Cheryl, you went.
Generally, who's invited is going to be the school board members, the superintendents, and then business managers, I think are the general,
And maybe some HR folks.
right?
So just with having kind of doing it more broadly and things like that, obviously just being very clear on who actually votes on anything that might come up, because it would be the member districts are
Mhm.
voting on anything that comes up, not individual members.
And the way that they do it in person is they get a little card. Each district gets a card that identifies the person who's voting on behalf of that district. So we would need to figure out a system to do that virtually. And
Just wondering.
I've been at like a caucus or something and they had there's an online system to do that. It was by town or something like that, but it'd be something that we would have to figure out to do.
Just wondering about union participation. I didn't hear anything about unions, with the union being invited or participating.
Do you think they should?
Well, it seems to me that, you know, if you're talking about the people who are impacted, they certainly, I mean, we're part of VEHI. It would seem to me that if you really wanted to open it up.
But what, can they vote or make motions at an annual meeting?
They can't, but they could give feedback, I guess.
Right.
Like we could do something like, I mean, traditionally public comment is at the top, but I know some school boards sprinkle public comment throughout the meeting. So we could structure it in a way that we open the meeting, we do the business part of the meeting, and then we like explain and give our spiel, and then we can open it up for public comment. And so anyone could attend, teachers, staff, union officials, school board members, you know, the business, sorry, what's your title, Cheryl? It's business director? What?
Business manager.
Business manager, I
director
think.
finance
I just gave you a promotion to director.
loosely, well, I am, but loosely business manager.
Business managers.
We
So,
respond to anything.
so I think it's there's the
CFO.
All right.
so there's the official part of the meeting with the official members. Everybody gets a vote. That's the business. And then there's the, hey, here's what we're doing, kind of want to explain to our stakeholders and invite the stakeholders to comment. So it would be kind of two aspects. Jonathan, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, sort of the genesis for this idea was when it's held at the VSA, VSBA conference at 8:15 in the morning for 15 minutes, you get a handful of folks, but there's really no business officials there or V-Sharp people there. And there's no opportunity for this group to talk about all the good work and the programs and things that we're doing to the audience that we deal with, where I think Mark probably speaks to the NEA membership at annual meetings and conferences. So there's really a sort of a disconnect for those people who aren't at, well, it's usually at Lake Moritz and Burlington this year, but thought it was a good idea to do something a little bit, you know, bigger and more open that people can attend. And there's no reason why anyone, as you said, can't attend and listen.
And Bobby Joe, you noted that this is going to be right after the rate filing. So certainly there's going to be a lot of eyeballs, concern, insert the word there. Mr. H?
Yeah, I just want to sort of build off of what John said. I think this year in particular, with the healthcare reform legislation, the kind of changes we're pondering, the rate renewal, this is a particularly propitious time to be having a conversation about the future of healthcare and where VEHI fits into it. And obviously the business end of this is important and it's an obligation. But the idea of opening up this to a broader conversation and questions, we've never actually done this. And I think it's a great time for us to seed this conversation and see what comes forth. I think it could be really enlightening for us. And it would probably help folks have a greater sense of understanding about what VEHI is and how we function and how we're thinking about the future.
You know, I just had this thought when we were talking about this, the management team, Lance and I, and Bobby Joe's like, how do we figure out the voting? And then there's an online thing. And what about if we do have the annual meeting as normal at 8:15 at the VSBA conference, and then separately we just do the discussion with our stakeholders, and then it's not, we're not restricted by Robert's rules. We can structure it like we want to. We can invite who we want to.
Great idea.
I love that idea. I was actually just thinking the same thing, Mike, while you guys were talking.
Yeah, like a town hall, exactly.
I'll make
We
that motion.
present and then they can ask, and that way we can have dialogue back and forth. Okay. All right.
So would that be two separate, like we do the pro forma meeting at the meeting, and then we'd have a separate one in November, like we're talking about,
Mhm.
right? That's what you're saying?
Yep. Bobby Joe, when is that? When was that the SBA conference?
It was the 30th of October.
And it's at the DoubleTree in Burlington off the highway.
Scary.
Yeah, Thursday. It's a Thursday.
Yeah.
Which is normally a Friday, and they changed it.
Okay. Did somebody have their hand up?
Yeah, so is where you're landing 2 meetings or 1 meeting with 2 parts?
We were talking about one meeting with 2 parts, but
Okay,
now we're talking about let's simplify by just having the business meeting, pro forma. They do the
Okay.
votes. They vote in the whatever business we do, 15 minutes. And then middle of November, we have a town hall type meeting. So I saw a lot of nods. Anyone opposed to that approach? Okay. So Bobby Joe, going back to the business part of this, what do we need to vote? What do we need to take any action today?
Yes, so we would need to vote to have the annual meeting on October 30th and close the books as of October 20th.
Could I have a motion to close the books as of October 20th and have our annual meeting on October 30th?
So moved.
Thank you, Lisa. Second. I saw Andrew. He pointed. I'm going to take that as a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. So we'll figure out that October. And we're trying to meet once before that, right? We're trying to do September. Okay.
Yes, and can I just say real quick, Mike, that I only got 5 responses on that September doodle poll, so I'm going to resend it right now. If people could reply to it tonight or tomorrow, be great.
Okay. Thank you. Can I have a motion to authorize Bobby Joe to come to your homes if you don't fill out the doodle poll? No. All right. Anything else on setting the annual meeting date, closing membership books, and then we'll have to work on the town hall. Okay. All right. Let's move on to next agenda item, which is the VEHI budget. Mrs. Roberts.
All right, thank you. So I am aware that we're running a little bit behind, so I will try to make this short and sweet. I think that overall, we're looking at a very positive budget that's in front of you compared to what the numbers we're usually looking at. The categories are the same. It's very, very much the same budget that we've had before you for many years as far as types of services. There's really no new line items in the budget this year. It's all existing line items that have been there before. It's basically made up of the 2 service contracts. So there's the VisBit admin expense, there's the Vermont NEA admin expense, there's wellness, and then there's our other expenses that we pay to VEHI, directly out of VEHI to vendors, like DFR fees, actuarial fees, things of that nature, our contract with Remedy. And lastly, last year, or maybe the year before, I guess it was FY24, we did add that $1 million capital investment to the PATH website. That was supposed to be completed in 2 years. It is actually going to run into the FY26 budget year, but we do not expect it to go over budget. It's just taking a little bit longer for them to complete the project. So that still is in there as a placeholder. So overall, when you take out the depreciation from the website, because that's kind of skewing things, basically the FY26 budget is increasing by 3.7%. So, considering what inflation is doing and cost of healthcare and everything else, 3.7% is fairly lean. The Bisbit admin expense is 3.6%. Vermont NEA is going up 3.5%. We're proposing a 3% increase to the wellness budget. And then other expenses are only going up $5,800 or 0.82%. And on those below the line, those other expenses, there are some line items in there that we have not always accessed each year, but we do leave them there in case they're needed. Some of the consulting and some of the employee education items. So any specific questions?
Just add one thing, which is, I think you all know this, but at the end of the year, Chris trues up the budget, and whatever we don't spend goes back to VEHI. It's an actual real number. It's not this number.
Right. And traditionally, I mean, it could go either way, technically, but traditionally, we've never had to go and ask for more money from VEHI. We've been able to produce a pretty sound budget, and things have played out as expected. So.
How does this increase compare to prior years? Is this in line? Is this more? Does it generally like track inflation?
Well, it depends on the year. I mean, we look at things, depending on, like, we've added staff sometimes, there's other factors that come into play. So I would say this is probably less than some years overall. This is a fairly minimal increase to the budgets across the board on this year, I would say. I don't really remember coming in. Maybe 1 or 2 years it's come in at like 2%, but usually it's more than that. But like I said, sometimes there's all these other factors involved, like adding the PATH website, or adding additional staff to the wellness program, or different things we're doing. So it's hard to just grapple on a number because there's always all these extenuating factors.
But I'm looking more for comparison or trending, right? Is this a typical increase?
I mean, if anything, maybe I think it's typical for the other expenses, fairly typical for Vermont NEA, pretty typical for wellness. There's been a couple of years where we have actually gone flat on wellness, but with the tariffs coming in and the other inflationary factors, we went flat last year. I think we do need the 3% this year. Probably the most change that you'll see is maybe in the Bisbit line item, because of staffing changes. But those are always staffing changes that were brought forward to the board ahead of time. Like we added a wellness person, or we added this. I think one thing that's helping a little bit, I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but your overhead expenses that are on this budget, you're getting a little bit of a break this year because the multi-line program added staff, and some of those they're basically spread. There's these fixed operating costs that exist, and when I look at the FTE count for each program, and then you spread that fixed cost based on the FTE count. So as other Bisbit programs hire more staff, the VEHI portion actually comes down. So, for example, like I'll give you a really quick example. So we have a postage machine rental. Okay, you have postage, but there's a machine that sits there, okay? And you pay a quarterly fee for this postage machine. It costs $1,676 annually just to rent the postage machine. If we were completely two separate companies with two different staffs with two different locations, both Bisbit and VEHI would be paying $1,676 annually for a postage machine. Because of the allocations we have in place, VEHI pays $550 and Bisbit pays $1126 for that particular postage machine. So as those FTE counts change, that changes that percentage of allocation because it's spread over. Each one FTE gets a straight valuation or straight portion of that to be divided up.
Okay.
Hopefully
you.
it wasn't too confusing there. But I did see that on this year's operating side on some of the operating expenses. It was going down a little bit because multi-line added some positions.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? So can I have a motion to approve the presented to approve the FY26 budget as presented? Thank you, Lisa. Seconded by Cheryl. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Chris.
Certainly.
All right. GLP-1 decision. Do we know who from the management team is going to lead this discussion?
Bobby Joe, would you like to set the table?
Sure. So we've done a lot of work on this, a lot of research, and to be honest, we still have some things outstanding. We are trying to determine the GLP-1s have been approved for a number of different things other than obesity, and we're trying to identify what Blue Cross is doing, and they are still open on whether or not they're covering the MACE indication, which I think we talked about last time, which is the major adverse cardiovascular events. My dog just loves to talk to me when I'm talking to you. Mark, why don't you go ahead? Sorry.
We can't hear the dog. You can
No.
hear.
Yeah, no, your dog's talking very quietly.
Definitely
He's
my
actually
issue.
screeching. So anyways, sorry. So we're waiting to hear from Blue Cross whether or not that's going to be covered. Sorry.
Do you want you can pass the baton if you want.
Yeah, Mark, why don't you go ahead? Sorry.
So where this is all leading is while we take a little deeper dive into some numbers and get clear about what they mean with Blue Cross's assistance and potentially with Remedy as well. Our recommendation for tonight is that we not actually make a decision about whether we will cover these medications in the coming fiscal year and the scope of that coverage, but spend the time looking at the research that we've shared, talking about the implications of what we're considering, taking your questions and concerns. Obviously, Shelley's testimony today, personal, poignant, will perhaps factor into all of this as well. But as Bobby Joe said, we have spent a considerable amount of time talking about this, writing about it, reading about it, and we tried to encapsulate the essence of what we're learning in the documents that we shared. And they are pages, well, they're numbered 1 and 2, right after the budget. And I think in summary, GLP-1 utilization has surged in the last 5 years, no surprise. These are very expensive medications. As Bobby Joe said, we are anticipating multiple indications, other medical conditions for which these medications will be prescribed in the coming years. This is not unusual, especially when a medication is at its high point of cost. They are all under patent protection at present. We are anticipating some changes in the next 5 years or so that may bring costs down somewhat, but there is nothing on the immediate horizon that suggests there's any significant price reduction or cost containment on the part of the pharmaceutical companies. There is a god-awful amount of money continuing to be made with the medications. I see Andrew's hand up. Andrew?
Couldn't find the mute button. I just have two, I'm just trying to understand. So we have the sole power to remove or add a prescription drug for coverage. And so like, or I'm assuming that could be anything. So like if someone, like if we thought open heart surgery was too expensive, we could remove it. Like that, I'm trying to understand our.
No. It's a good question. It's a good question. So we're talking here about an RX formulary, right? The menu, if you will, of medications and RX products that our members have access to. Our formulary, when I say our, it's really Blue Cross's formulary that's been negotiated with Optum, or it's Optum's formulary that Blue Cross has agreed to. And because we are under Blue Cross's umbrella, that formulary is by default our formulary. And that historically is how we've operated. We as an ASO do have the latitude to qualify, amend, add or remove medications to that formulary with Blue Cross's cooperation. It is something I don't think we've ever done, with the exception of erectile dysfunction medications back when we were making the transition to the new benefit plans. And I think even then, Blue Cross may already have made that move on its own. I don't know if we were the first to do it. But as a general rule, we track Blue Cross's formulary that is Optum's formulary. And Chris may have a qualification that's helpful. Chris?
So I just remember in a meeting with Blue Cross that we had a while ago, and Bobby Joe and John, Bobby Joe and Mark and John, all three of them are much closer to this than I am. So correct me if I misstate anything. But I remember Blue Cross talking about that DFR was okay with us having this conversation about GLP-1s. Lance, to your question, or Andrew, we would not be able to remove open heart surgery, okay? But this particular drug, yes, Bobby just got the words for me. It is not considered an essential benefit. Just like erectile dysfunction drugs were not considered an essential benefit. So when you're talking about, you know, a treatment for diabetes or something that is a specific medication that that is considered more of an essential and approved essential benefit, they're not viewing these just for weight loss as an essential benefit. You know, you're looking at it just like there are other things that people could be doing for weight loss that are not covered today. Now, for different people, they may or may not work as well. However, you know, we're not paying for a subsidy for people to buy more expensive fruit instead of candy bars, which obviously helps. You know, I'm not trying to minimize anything here. I personally just will share for a minute. I've been overweight my entire life, so I'm not unsympathetic, okay? I'm just trying to look at this from a very factual basis.
No, I appreciate that. And Mark's explanation really helped, because I'll put it in a little bit of an analogy this way. I don't think a bunch of legislators have the understanding around education to make decisions on how to draw lines for districts, but that's who's going to be making those decisions, right? And so like I worry about, like, do I have the depth of knowledge to make a determination on a medication for a person? I don't have that medical background, but to parse that out about what's essential and not essential, I can understand that. That makes much more sense, and I appreciate that. So thank you. The other,
and that may change over the years, Andrew. I mean, you know, Mark has said this is bound to come up in legislation. So, you know, this medication may be listed as an essential medication at some point, but today it's not, which is why we're allowed to take it off.
yeah, no, and I understand that.
Yeah,
again,
today it's not, just to clarify, by CMMS?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's where like my whole personal confliction is with this thing, because I understand the dollars and the cents piece of it. So I fully appreciate that. But my other question is, knowing the high cost of this, I'm curious, is the high cost caught up with the, like what Blue Cross Blue Shield has negotiated with these companies? Because very honestly, my doctor told me, if your insurance company cancels this, we can buy direct right from the provider for $400 a month.
Yep.
As opposed to over $1,200 a month. Like, that is insane.
Right. This brings us back to Mike's comment earlier about how PBMs operate, and Cheryl sort of alluded to this as well. We don't have an inside look at how PBMs negotiate with big pharma. And it's in those negotiations, and as Bobby Joe likes to say, it's a shell game, or a very black hole box, whichever metaphor you'd like. Maybe both work here. And it's in those negotiations that we're not privy to, where prices are set, rebates are set, and then the PBMs price these medications that are under patent protection. There's no generic equivalents, and the price reflects a very serious markup from what it should be priced at. And Blue Cross actually doesn't do any of these negotiations, to be really clear, right? Blue Cross contracts with the PBM like most carriers do for a formulary, for rebates, for prices. Remedy Analytics and also Blue Cross's team, they do negotiate with the PBMs as well over a variety of factors. But the price setting ultimately, I think, is a PBM responsibility. And to whatever extent we can mitigate that through negotiations, we do. But we inherit a formulary, we inherit a pricing scheme, we wait for these medications to become preferred or generic, where we see a very significant drop in prices. And in the interim, we try to manage as best we can. And we've complained in the past, and I'll take another opportunity to complain about Humira, which for 2 decades has been our top priced medication and has caused us tremendous financial burden. And it's been under patent for that period of time as well. It's now a biosimilar. We're seeing the price come down pretty dramatically. But again, Bobby Joe's talked about this at other meetings. When those biosimilars or generics come on market, we lose the rebates. So they have us coming and going. They can hit us with the high price, dangle some rebate in front of us in the hope that that will pacify and make us think we're getting a great deal. And then when the generic or biosimilar enters the market, the price comes down, sometimes 70, 80% with the generic, but you lose your rebates. So for any pool right now, trying to navigate this market is tremendously difficult. And Andrew, the sort of ethical conundrum that this poses has not been lost on us as a management team. And none of us feel comfortable, and John talked about this in one of our meetings, putting ourselves between a patient and a doctor, right? We never want to do that. But we're facing the kind of cost pressures now that require us, at least in the immediate future, to think about suspending coverage for some uses of this medication and continuing to track the research, continuing to see if there's an opportunity to bring it back and in what manner and at what cost. And I cannot imagine, as Bobby Joe said a moment ago, that there is not going to be legislative conversation around this, especially as the Blue Cross decision rolls out. MVP, excuse me, the second largest carrier, has made a decision as well to exclude for weight loss. We're seeing this around the country with a number of ASOs, and we're seeing in some state legislatures conversation about all of this. So I think this is going to be increasingly a political issue. And in years to come, it'll be another medication or set of medications that pools like ours will have to grapple with when these costs reach what they are. The other thing about this particular medication, and this is, I think, unique to the GLP-1s, and you see this in our research, the speed with which the volume of these medications is increasing, or the prescriptions are increasing, is really unique. One of the research findings we looked at said that 36% of American households now have at least one person who's on a GLP-1. I can't think of a comparable medication in my time as a trust administrator, maybe with the exception of statins. But statins today are really cheap because they're generic. But on the brand side of things, they have 36% of American households with one member at least on them. That's a pretty powerful statement about what we're facing. Cheryl?
Thank you. three things, not necessarily all connected, but somewhat connected. I just wanted to say, Andrew, and if you had an HSA, you could put money aside to pay for those drugs yourself. Not only would you have the money that the employer put into your HSA, you can contribute quite a bit yourself. It's all pre-tax going in and it's pre-tax going out. So adding that as an option for more of our employees, depending on the decision that we make with regard to this, is something to consider. Because
Sure,
that's a
well,
great,
Yeah,
great,
no, I appreciate that. Bobby Joe, well, I mean, she knows my plight with my HSA and all that stuff quite well.
okay.
No,
Just
no,
saying, it's
no,
just an,
I'm
it's
aware of
just,
that. Yeah.
just saying, I'm just saying, not necessarily for you specifically, but for anybody, it provides a choice.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. I think that's great. Just again, there are three things.
Sorry,
not
I'm sorry. Can
necessarily-
I just go back to the,
Yep,
are HSAs part of any of the 4 plans that we offer today?
the silver,
The silver.
but it has the
So-
highest it has the highest exposure of any of our plans.
So going back to Shelley's question to say, is there any structural plan we can do in the plan that could somehow, if we decided not to cover it, could alleviate some of the financial burden? This is one way to do that, is to continue having an HSA.
Right.
To
You could
add
also
the HSA and the
finance it
gold.
with I'm sorry, Bobby Joe, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say to add the HSA to the gold CDHP where the majority of folks are.
Okay, thank you.
There's
All right,
also,
Oh.
you can use money in an FSA as well for this
Okay.
purpose. flexible
Right,
spending
but
account.
it's the HSA is more flexible, and you have the opportunity to put more money into the HSA, and typically employers don't contribute to FSAs because FSAs have a use it or lose it clause with them, which is as opposed to an HSA, you can put it away. It's always yours. You can, I have my HSA invested, so it's earning interest. It's great.
Okay, thank you.
So, and you can't do that with an FSA. It's usually FSAs are much smaller amounts, not nearly as flexible. Is hormone replacement therapy considered essential? Just curious. Just because of the erectile dysfunction question came up.
I know
Just
it's a
curious.
covered benefit. I don't know if it's considered essential or not.
Okay, just curious about that one.
I can find out.
And then, so then I was wondering on, I think it's page 11 at the bottom there, those bullets where talking about management of utilization on the GLP-1s, those types of things. So currently we don't do any of those things in order to manage utilization. Is that right? So is that like, so with regard to that list, are those like, you could do some of these things, you could do all of these things? Just trying to, so it says more than 3/4 of employers control costs through utilization management. So I'm wondering, do we do any of these things or do we do none of these things right now?
I am.
It's page 11.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list right now. They're the bulleted items at the page. My
Right.
apologies.
Yeah,
There's 2 page numbers on these, and that's because I
Right,
numbered
it's
these.
11 or 2 of
Right.
the,
It's page 11 in the agenda.
yeah, 11 in the agenda, 2 on the research and data on the GLP.
I think it's a great question. And then if you look on page 13/4, the adherence numbers were very surprising to me. So I think though that's related to that question of how do we manage once it's prescribed, how do we manage the ongoing usage of the drugs?
And that's one of the things that
Mark
Mark was
addressed that.
mentioning from the PBM perspective is, instead of giving a 90-day supply up front, they would only give a 30-day supply up front because the GLP-1s do have significant side effects when you first start taking them, especially. Most people kind of get past them, but if you can't get past them, they stop taking them. So that was one of the utilization things that could be done. I know that we have like a prior approval program, but there's no nutritional piece that's required that I'm aware of. So there's definitely room for conversations about this, about are there other things that we can do? So
So that would be currently, we're not doing any of these things.
I don't have it up, so I'm just trying to
Okay.
get it.
So I think we're teeing up for another discussion in September. So I think that's one of the takeaways that the board would like to know. What are we doing post prescription or from that bullet list? And what are the things that we could do that we're not doing that would help?
I mean,
We are doing something with the reauthorization. I don't know if it's called reauthorization, but wasn't Allison speaking, Bobby Joe, about that, about how they were looking at BMI and, you had to be like a certain BMI to be on the drug.
yeah. I mean,
So
the thing that's hard is, you implementing these additional programs to monitor adds more cost, so it's
Hmm.
a bit of a catch-22.
Right. I guess you have to weigh what the cost of implementing this versus what the savings you might be able to generate if you did some of these things. So I don't know how you analyze that, or if that comes through the process of looking at that next gen PBM, is that's part of the RFP. Is we would like to implement some of these things, so you need to build that into your response to our RFP, so we're aware of the costs we might incur for going this route.
We're almost at time, but I think it's an important discussion, or we're a little over time. Any other board members with comments or questions, especially information that you're looking for to make a decision or get closer to a decision at the next board meeting?
I
Lisa?
guess I'm just curious about how many people use HSAs and whether it was always my understanding that you had to be it had to be the slightly higher income people who could benefit from it just because they didn't have the resources. But I would just be curious how many people use HSAs.
Bobby Joe can give you the number, but the problem with our current HSA, it's connected to the plan that has the highest exposure for an employee. So if you don't, you have to decide
Right,
whether you want
yeah.
to risk higher exposure
Right.
and go with that plan, or if you want to kind of reduce that risk. And
But even before this new plan was introduced,
I will-
HSAs were discussed. And there was always the question of, how, anyway, just a
So
thought.
I have one thing. It's just the Visbit group, but as an association, we are allowed to have the HSA, okay, and with Gold CDHP. And I can tell you that everyone who is eligible has an HSA in our organization, from our lowest paid employee to our highest paid employee.
Which organization?
Visbit.
Ah.
Visbit.
Mark?
Yeah, just quickly, I don't dispute Cheryl's general description of how HSAs work, but it's also, to Andy's point about the cost differential between what we pay for these medications and what you can get them at if you order direct from a manufacturer. So it's, what is it, roughly $1,200 or $1,500 depending on the medication, and a $300 or $400 or $300 to $500 cost if you order directly. It's a fairly significant spread, right? So when we talk about people paying out of pocket, at least abstractly, that spread is pretty significant. In reality, for a lot of the people who have coverage through VEHI, especially low-income people, $300 to $500 a month, depending on where you order from, is simply not in the cards. And with HSAs, there are a lot of people who are not eligible for HSAs for a variety of reasons, which we have explained in some detail in a document that's on our website. That's not to say people don't benefit from HSAs if they have them, but there are a number of people who just don't qualify for them, or their dependents don't qualify for them. So there's complications in all of that as well. Just something to keep in mind when we think about the cost implications of purchasing a medication of this kind. There's a lot more research in HSAs and who benefits and who doesn't to the largest degree, who invests and who doesn't. We don't need to get into that tonight, but as sharp a differential as $300 compared to $1,200 is for these medications, unfortunately for a lot of people, $300 a month is just too much.
I'm just
And
about
I
choice.
remember like however long ago it was that HRAs and HSAs first were offered, I remember that the people that were tending to take the HSAs, you know, because they qualified for it, were younger people who were healthy and didn't need to go to the doctor very often. They would just go for checkups every year. That's what I remember.
It's a fabulous benefit for exactly those people because they may not have Medicare available to them the way it is now when they're in their 60s. So it's a fabulous way for those young people to save for the future. And it should just be a choice. That's all I say. I'm not saying there should just be an HRA. There should just be a choice, and people should be able to make a choice about what works best for them. I don't feel that's a choice that we should be making for employees. I think it's a choice that they should make for themselves. They have a choice of an HRA, they have a choice of an HSA.
It seems that we've kind of digressed a little bit from
Oh,
the
yeah.
GLP coverage.
So I'm going to ask one more time. Is there any other information that any board member is looking to get to a closer to be able to make a decision in September? Okay. It's not the last call. If you think of something, let the management team know. Let Lance and I know. Bobby Joe and Mark, you think that you're going to ask for a decision in September? Is that your goal?
I think we have to do it no later than September. There may even be a need to do it a little sooner than that in a special meeting. We hope that's not the case, but we'll let you know.
Yeah,
We
it
just
is.
need to have a decision leading up to rate setting, which we'll start looking at some numbers, I think, in August and get really in the weeds by early September.
If we
Okay.
don't, I mean, we have to have at least 120 days to implement. So if we don't do it until sometime in September or even October, we're now pushing it out to January, February, March, which can be done. I'm just letting you know that that's the longer that we push it out. Mark and I were this morning on the same page and ready to request we thought we were ready to request a vote. But then we had some information about the MACE folks, and we don't know how many people that is. We want to see what Blue Cross ends up doing. So we've pulled back our request for a vote today. But if we want to move forward with it in our rate filing, it's going to have to probably be in July or August, the latest. So
Okay.
just
Something I was wondering about is, I know that we have one of the things that we've talked about is that there's been increased utilization of healthcare. So more people are using healthcare, and we've seen that data. And I also see that the instances where people are using GLP-1, that has gone up a lot too. So what percentage or how much of the increased utilization that we're seeing is caused by people using GLP-1s? Did I say that question? Did I ask that question in a way that makes sense?
Yeah.
yeah, you're
So,
right on. Lance. This is
I'd be
good.
interested in kind of having that, like, is that sort of driving the increase, or is it just a small part of the increase? The overall increased utilization. Is it really just a small part of it, or is it like a major player in that?
It's a major player when it comes to the prescription portion. for sure. The GLP-1s are going up like 200% per year for utilization. The cost hasn't really gone up all that much. They've been high and they continue to be high, but the utilization has increased. We were at like 300 and then we were at 1,000. This year we're on track to be at 1,900 members on it. So we're seeing really high utilization in this drug. It's a high cost drug. So from a prescription perspective, yes, that's the utilization issue for this. I would say this is by far the biggest utilization jump in the pharmacy realm.
Okay. Oh, Andrew's got the last word.
Okay, just real quick, with the utilization jump on the GLPs,
Mhm.
one of the conversations I was having with my doctor is what you were talking about, you said MACE or whatever, like where the other, like she talked to me about all these different areas, like, around anxiety, like areas that they had no idea this drug would help at all. And like, so if someone has anxiety, they can be on the GLP and not need any other medication for the anxiety and can go to work and can do the things that was prohibiting them from doing it, or alcoholism, or like, I think they're just starting to figure out, like, and that's what, like, they're throwing it at everything. And then like someone who's like had a heart attack, it'll keep them from reoccurring a heart attack. Like, I think it's been like, they almost are calling it like a wonder drug in that sense. And now I guess there's a new one coming out that has 3 hormones in it. Like, so like Ozempic had 1 hormone in it, Zepbound has two in it, and they're coming out with another one that has 3 in it that, from what my doctor was telling me. So you know how Shelley said that she's not responding or something? Didn't she say something about like, she's not losing weight real fast or something like
Right.
that? This 3rd hormone one is supposed to be able to address people like what she was talking about, that it's like 20% of these people on this drug. So I don't know, like, I don't know where it's going to stop. That's the craziness of it. So
Yeah, it's just hard because you can buy prescriptions for anti-anxiety for $10 a month versus $1,200 a month for this. So it's
but I
like
think,
to what end, do we continue to
but if
cover
you
it for
think about
everybody?
some
Television
of
advertising
the
is
side
through the
effects of
roof.
the 2 different side effects, like you take like some of those they wreak havoc on other parts of the system, and then this, like, the GLPs may or may not have like big side effects. Because I will tell you, again, I've shared, like, on Wegovy, I would get like, feel like bad for a day or something like that. On Zepbound, no side effects at all. Like, it's like just part of, like, it's a weird thing. So
And they're looking at or they're testing out a pill-based version, right? So there's people who are adverse to giving themselves shots.
Right.
And so if they come out with a pill-based version, that's just going to be even more people who I think are going to be interested. So yeah, the landscape is changing. The outcomes are still being figured out, but it's all trending medically in a positive direction, but the cost is also increasing, right? So it is a very, to your point earlier in the meeting, Andrew, right? It's really hard to ask us to make that balancing decision of the benefit versus the cost, right? This is why we get paid the big bucks. All right, I'm going to move on. Let's do something not as serious. I mean, no, I'm sorry. It's just as serious. Whistleblower policy and code of ethics. It's going to be a little more pro forma. So, we review these once a year. The let's see, the whistleblower one has not been changed since 2017. But I will open it up to see if anyone has any suggestions or questions about it. All right. So I will ask for a motion to reapprove the VEHI whistleblower policy as written.
So moved.
Thank you, Lisa. Seconded by Cheryl. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Code of Ethics. This one also 2017. This is not the conflict of interest. Also CO. Oh no, that one's COI. This is COE. Any questions, comments, concerns? Jonathan's dog looks very interested in this. Did it change color because you rubbed its color off, or you have two dogs?
This is my daughter's dog, who is a sister to the other brown one. I had to give them equal lap time.
I was a little curious. I
Yeah.
could have sworn it was not a white
I
dog.
will get the white one.
All right. Back to business, Jonathan. Come on. Focus. May I have a motion to approve the Code of Ethics policy as written? Thank you, Suzanne. Second, Cheryl. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. We're going to swap the agenda as discussed. We're going to talk about the update on the commission conversation that Lance and I had. Bring up
Hey, Mike, quick
notes.
question before we do that is do we now put on there that it was like reapproved in 2025? Do we put a new date at the bottom of that in addition to the 2017 one? Or like reviewed 2025, something like that, so that we know that we've done that, or, future boards would know that we looked at that in 2025. Is that right? Do we do that?
Great question. Bobby Joe tells me yes. So we do it.
Yes, we'll put a new date on there and add it to the web.
Thank you for the question. Okay. So Lance and I met with the commission chairs, Mark and Mike, in the end of May, just like a day or two after our day after our last meeting. Their asks were, so we talked about two subjects. One was around the Blue Cross Blue Shield ASO contract, and the other was around plan redesign. So around the Blue Cross Blue Shield ASO contract, it was a much quicker conversation to make sure they understood that we're self-insured and that's the administrative services. We did tell them that we're looking at an RFI and not an RFP, and that we're looking at carving off the PBM, which we discussed today. They were generally supportive of both of those. Lance, any comments or corrections on that aspect of the conversation?
No, that's good.
And then around plan redesign, their asks were, this was a more expansive discussion. So first of all, they both were talking about what I would call healthcare reform. And Mark has led us in conversations on that. We've also made some official statements in support of different legislation. So they were interested in what VEHI was interested in, was willing to do around general healthcare reform. And we did talk about that we are looking at the levers that VEHI owns and can pull. Their other ask was around simplification, around plan redesign. So, and I think when they came on and did the public comment a while ago, that was one of the things. They recognize, like Bobby Joe told us, we got 4 plans, but really 2 are the ones that are utilized and 1 majority. So they like the idea of reducing the number of plans, but in general, they were interested in, hey, can we simplify the plans themselves? Their other ask was and I'll say this, I wrote it down, bring in the commission to inform the work on plan redesign. They said that we're the experts on designing the plans, and they're not. But they have people like what they call the Steves. So there was a Vermont NEA data consultant named Steve, and there's the VSBA data consultant, Steve May. The Vermont NEA Steve is being maybe he retired or something, or went to a different job, so there'll be a new person to be named. But they offered to give us access to the Steves to help crunch numbers. And they also just wanted to have them inform our work, because we will, when we design a plan, and if they layer something on top, it's better to look at it as a holistic whole. So they're not asking to be in the room for the plan redesign. They're not asking to be part of the decision making, but to help inform it, which I think is I'm well in favor of. Some questions that they brought up is like, hey, do we bring back copays? Which parts of the plans are underused? What's included in the premium? What can shift to leveraging a copay? Or how do you solve the high usage of the emergency rooms and emergency departments versus going to primary care? So those are some of the questions they had around plan redesign. Lance, did I miss anything from our discussion?
No, I think, no, I think you covered the topics, and the questions they had and everything, but I just want to point, just want to say that one of the things that they understand is that there's a separation between negotiations and the plan design. It wasn't like they wanted us to plan, to do design plans based on how they're going to negotiate, the cost sharing piece. So I think that we need to make sure that we understand that this wasn't where they were trying to kind of jump in with us. They want to be informed and they want to understand what's going on with the plans. But you're right though. When you say that they think that we're the experts in this, and that they really don't know anything about healthcare design, about what the plans are going to look like. All they do is negotiate who's going to pay what piece of it. But I just want to make sure that that we understand that there is that separation between negotiations and the plan designs.
Thank you. Bobby Joe.
Yeah, so it sounds like, what I hear them saying is, hey, if it's important to you that there's a $50 copay on emergency room, we don't want to kind of trample over that, right? I mean, that's what I kind of hear them saying is, if we are putting plans in place to try and move people in a certain direction, we need the commission not to undo that work. I mean, I kind of hear that's what they're trying to say, or am I misinterpreting?
No, they didn't say that explicitly, but I think that is the type of thing that we should say, hey, we're looking at that, like a $50 copay for the ED in order to, right, to drive down the ED costs.
Right.
So when you negotiate, don't muck that up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah, and I
that's
want to
just an
be,
example
yeah,
we
and
have.
I want to be careful with that because that right there is us trying to affect negotiation. If we were to say something like that, if we were to say we're going to have a $50 copay, and we don't want you to, we don't want you to have, the districts or pay part of that. We are jumping into negotiations if we were to do that. So we need to be careful about that.
Okay. Oh, we can do it like, hey, we're thinking about a copay for the ED in order to encourage people to schedule time with their primary care physician as opposed to go to the ED for care that they can get at their primary. We can explain why we're doing something. Is that a better approach?
Why wouldn't we?
I think I don't see anything wrong with taking an approach where we design plans and give the rationale behind why we designed the plans the way we did. But in the end, you know, it can't be that we are making recommendations to them about how they should have the cost sharing work. That's their work, not ours.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on our discussion with the commissioners? Okay. Let's move on to talk about plan redesign. So I know that, thank you, Suzanne and Cheryl, for being voluntold last meeting.
I did read that in the minutes that we volunteered. I went, no. Maybe Cheryl did. I won't speak for you.
Maybe AI interpreted it.
It was the AI.
Yeah. Well, we did meet last week, and we had a pretty far-ranging conversation, and maybe we veered off from talking about the guidelines, but we had a really good discussion, and I think that we have some major agreement on some things that we believe that we should have in mind when we deal with plans. First of all, we can really easily agree with the commissioners that we want simplification that it's easier to administer, simplification that there are fewer plans, maybe even fewer choices. I think Cheryl agrees with that we said, let's make it a lot simpler, to the point that we got as far as saying, maybe we have 2 plans. Now, we know that we are not the decision makers. We're not the deciders, so to speak, but we did suggest 2 plans, one being CDHP plan that had compatibility with an HRA and an HSA, and a second plan that's more along the lines of a traditional plan with copays and the kinds of things that pre-CDHP that we were pretty much used to. We also talked about affordability, lower plan costs being a really important feature of things that should guide us, because, obviously, we have people who can't afford their taxes, or we have people whose budgets don't pass. We have to worry about the financial health of VEHI. We have to make sure our subscribers can afford high quality healthcare. There's a whole gambit there of things that fall under an affordability network. And so we talked about we kind of started off by talking about timelines, and maybe that's where we sort of derailed about some of our other pieces, but it's pretty clear that we need to have something between January and April of 2026, sooner than later, in the tank, so that we can get all of the approvals and the rate setting that we need for a new plan to begin in January 2028. So that means we have a pretty short window to be looking at what we might want to do with regard to a couple of plans. We obviously know there's maybe 3 things we can do if we want to lower costs. We could, talk about a cost shift that, subscribers pay more, we increase copays. We might look at benefit coverage, what's our benefit design, specifically what we include, what we don't include. Or maybe the third thing is to look at some of the new concepts and what new things we can add to the mix to lower costs along the, I think the commissioners talked about what we're doing about healthcare reform. Cheryl, do you want to jump in? Because there's one other question that we have for you about the consultant piece, but Cheryl, in regard to the first part of what I just said.
No, All good.
You're okay, all right. So then we did talk at the end about going forward. Are they two paths that we could take? One path is the fact that we absolutely have to be thinking about if we want to have something by implemented in 2028. We need to move forward with a whole raft of things. But secondly, they might be some things that we could do prior to January of 2028 with regard to some healthcare reform measures and pieces that we could add into what we have under our existing 4 plans without changing the 4 plans per se. That would help lower costs. And so that begged the question of whether or not we would be in favor of hiring or utilizing consultants to help us with this mission, either short-term and long-term. And I'm going to be really clear, Cheryl, Cheryl was very emphatic, and I think we can agree that we're not going to try push off a plan redesign even further, that if we want to make something available that the commissioners can bargain over, this is our window to do it. So the question is a little bit about where we go with a consultant. And Cheryl and I don't know if we had a disagreement or agreement or some other principled discussions about which way we went. And we said, well, why don't we bring that question to the board to talk about consultants?
But I think I would add that I think we thought that, yes, there might be a 2-phased approach, but maybe those 2 phases don't both require using a consultant to make a decision about what we might want to do. The first phase, in terms of the number of our current plans and the HRA, HSA connected to those plans, is something that we could possibly look at without having to use a consultant, so that we can get something moving in the direction that we want to go that would meet the timeline. But anything beyond that might require the assistance of a third party to look at those things. So I don't think my thinking or my impression wasn't that we necessarily needed a consultant for both of those phases. If you want to consider phase 1 is sort of that number of plans of the current plans that we have, and the second phase being more in depth in terms of, are there things that we are covering that we should cover differently or handle differently? Should we, benchmark ourselves on others in the state, like the state of Vermont's plan, UVM's, the exchange, those types of things. So I guess I would just add that clarification. I was not thinking that we necessarily needed a consultant for kind of phase 1 and phase 2, that we might be able to, there's a piece of it we might be able to do without a consultant, because I expressed a great deal of concern about getting stuck making a decision. You have to figure out what consultants, you have to vet the consultants, what's their timeline and what's their cost, and losing that very tight window of opportunity that we have to make any changes that would be effective January 28th.
And I think I can agree with you, Cheryl, on that piece, as long as, harking back to what Andy said earlier, if we're making important decisions about plan design or formulary or whatever, do we know what we're talking about? That would be my biggest fear, is if we decide to up a copay on a particular procedure or whatever, is that the best way of doing it? Is that the biggest bang for our buck? So I get nervous about that personally without,
I would agree, and I would agree, and that's what I agreed, that those are the types of discussions that we might need to consider having a consultant help us with. But I don't want to lose sight of there's a part of this that we could make a decision on that I don't think would have a huge impact on our the current choices that people are making, and might actually expand the choices that people have currently without impacting, specific benefits and cost sharing and that type of thing.
so Mike,
I
I'm
know-
turning this back to you.
Okay. Thank you both very much. I know Lisa raised her hand a while ago, even though she didn't put up the Zoom hand.
I
So
haven't figured
start
that
with
one
Lisa.
out, sorry. I keep looking for where to do the hand thing. Oh,
React.
recognized hand gestures.
React. There you go.
Oh, under
Yeah.
reactions.
Under react.
You hit the
Right.
carrot.
It didn't give it to me.
The heart that says
Just hit the
react.
heart.
The heart.
Just the heart itself.
Just hit
Oh,
the-
okay. Thank you. All
Yep.
right. I appreciate it. I'm a really, computers like. Okay. Anyway, thank you for recognizing me, Mike. I will use the
No, it's
appropriate
all good. I recognize
method
the
from
actual
here on.
hand. Yes.
I've been trying. Anyway, I'm not sure I understood exactly the difference between when to use a consultant or when not. And then my second concern is that I don't see a significant disadvantage in using a consultant. I understand that we have a timeline. I understand that we're under constraints, but I would rather make sure that we don't screw this up. I mean, these are significant decisions that are going to impact everybody on these plans. And it's obviously money, and it's obviously, how you live, right? Whether you can use the medication that you need. And so I would push for a consultant for all of this, just because I'm just not sure that our tinkering with plans, I don't know. That would be my statement.
Thank you. Chris?
I would just suggest that we not forget that we already have a business partner in Blue Cross Blue Shield who are experts in this area. It crossed my mind when we were having the GLP-1 conversation as well. We're talking about, who makes the call on those formularies. Usually we have followed Blue Cross Blue Shield's lead to make those kinds of recommendations. Because they do have a medical department, and they do have doctors on staff, and they are evaluating that. So, maybe that's something the board could use Blue Cross as the starting point. If you're talking about not wanting to hire a full consultant for maybe some smaller adjustments in the beginning. But Bobby Joe could speak more to that than I, because she has much more experience in that area.
Thank you. Lance?
Yeah, just when Suzanne said that we have important decisions, what popped in my head was that important decisions should be informed decisions. And so the question becomes, what do we need to do so that we are making informed decisions throughout this process? Whether it's, if it is hiring a consultant, if it's working with Blue Cross Blue Shield as some sort of consultant, or, the consultant for part of it and no consultant for part of it. I don't know what that looks like, but I think that we need to make a decision so that we're going to be making informed decisions, and we need to have information.
Thank you, Lance. Mark?
Yeah, when we met as a small group, we had a good conversation about consultants, and it was Cheryl who recommended, and I agree with this, that we should offer the board, if we choose to go down this road, more than one option. And I said, I do a little research in that regard, and I have. And Bobby Joe and John and I had a conversation about this today. and about the benefits of a consultant or the kind of things we might be looking for from a consultant. I actually don't think a consultant process is going to slow us down. I think, in fact, just the opposite. And I say that because in the world of ASO, self-insured entities, especially large ones like ourselves, both regionally and nationally, there's a lot of innovative work being done in the commercial market. And it's being done chiefly by ASOs because they have found that the traditional commercial insurance market is not sufficiently innovative or sophisticated, and in some cases, not really interested in making big changes. The kind of changes that significantly reduce costs and don't interfere with access to care. In fact, make it more affordable for everyone. So this is where I'm going to disagree with my colleague, Chris. I don't have any problem with us consulting Blue Cross, but I think this is a process that should happen outside of the circle of Blue Cross this time around. If there are opportunities to talk with Blue Cross about particular things, I have no qualms about that. But I think us taking an independent path and pursuing particular cost-saving measures that we know structurally can really lower costs, like a new PBM, for example, or special arrangements with centers of excellence, or potentially a new telehealth arrangement. Those are measures with good outside consulting and support that we can initiate on our own. And there may be a role for Blue Cross and all of that. But I think taking an independent path here makes a lot of sense. And I don't think it would, I think by the end of the summer, at the latest, we could have a consultant on board who can help us navigate this entire process and identify where the biggest cost savings are. And finally, as I said before, for me, I really think we've got an opportunity to lower premiums, not just bend the cost curve, if we do this smartly. And there are people out there who are doing it. And I'd like us to consider having them in our stable, if you will, and to guide us.
Cheryl?
So a couple things. I do believe there are some decisions that we can make without a consultant. And I think there are some decisions that are better made with a consultant. I would like to look at how we would schedule the decision about the hiring of the finding the consultant, hiring the consultant, and getting a report back from a consultant, and then having enough time to make a decision based on that information in order to meet the timeline of making any decisions, of making a decision by, I think, like the latest was, we were like March, April of 2026. I'm very concerned about not being able to meet that timeline. I'm very concerned about having done nothing because of the timeline and having to wait for a consultant, which is why I would propose that for making a decision about the number of plans that we offer of our current 4 plans. That would be phase 1, making a decision about which of our current 4 plans we continue to offer, and could we add an HSA to one of those plans, which why would we get rid of the gold CDHP when the vast majority of our subscribers are on that plan? So I think that's kind of a given that you wouldn't get rid of the gold CDHP. So then you're looking at the other 3 plans. So my proposal would be that we make a decision on which of our 4 current plans we continue to offer and whether or not we should add an HSA as a choice to the current gold CDHP plan, and then further decisions about the plans and other aspects of redesign we should use a consultant to make those decisions about. because clearly one of the things the commissioners are saying, I mean, I think they know, we have too many plans. I mean, we have, one of the plans is almost utilized by nobody. I mean, we have to get specifically, I don't know if Bobby Joe, you have those numbers available. The gold plan is almost used by nobody. And usually what we find is people end up on the gold plan by mistake. And when they figure out that they chose it by mistake and what they really wanted to be on was the gold CDHP, we have to go jump through a whole bunch of hoops to try to get that fixed for them. So I think there's kind of some low hanging fruit there on that. And we could at least get something under our belt, because I'm telling you, we will have such a revolt if we end up not doing anything, rolling in to this next round of negotiations, because we ended up with having the same plans for 5 years, because it was 3 years and a 2-year extension. So that's 5 years. So if we're potentially then looking at 5 years beyond 2028, or even 3 years, you're looking at 2031 if we don't do something. And I think people just won't stand for it.
Thank you, Cheryl. Mark, I see your hand up. Before we go around again, I'm going to ask Andrew, do you want to, I'm not mandating you say, but do you want to chime in on this, or no at this point?
No, I've been listening. I tried to get caught up from the last meeting, but I'm kind of, you know,
Fine. I just want to give you the opportunity.
thank you.
So my thoughts are, I like the idea of a two-phase approach. I am concerned about making decisions that impact people's lives as lay people, as they would say. So I like the idea of bringing a consultant for the medium and heavy lift. I also agree with Cheryl that I would like to do something in the short term. And so my ask to my fellow board members who were nominated by the NEA, would you be open to looking at things that we think on the call here that we can we find some agreement on some tweaks to the plans that we think are low risk and we all can maybe get behind? And Cheryl brought up two of them. One is go from 4 plans down to 2, which I keep hearing from everybody. And then Cheryl's idea of adding an HSA. So my ask is to my board members is, can you get behind that approach? Or is that still too risky for you? And you want to get a consultant and try and go hey, let's get a consultant on board for something we can implement next year.
Mike, can I just speak to the HSA question just for a moment?
Yeah, well,
It's just a clarification. That's
Okay,
all.
sure.
Because the current gold CDHP is compatible with either an HRA or an HSA.
No,
It's the terms. Yes, it is. It's the terms. Hold on. It's the terms of bargaining that determine whether you can use an HSA with the gold CDHP or the silver. Consumer directed CD means it's HSA compatible. It's the terms of bargaining that determine whether you can have an HSA with the gold CDHP or the silver. It's not the plan itself. So you've got a plan.
So I want to just park that for a moment, right? Those are the specifics of what is the change going to be? My ask is of my fellow board members, are you open to the approach of phase 1, finding things that we can agree on without a consultant that we could put in place by early next year for the following year implementation, and then bringing in a consultant for the heavier lift? Andrew?
Sorry, it popped in my head as you said something again, is what my new business manager has talked about, is like with like having the 5 different plans, the amount of behind the scenes work with reconciliation that takes
Mm.
place is a time suck. And a lot of errors
Enormous.
happen. And so
Enormous.
school districts are spending money with FTEs behind the scenes, like having to reconcile every month all these different plans. And so less plans actually could be a saver behind the scenes. And Cheryl, am I
Yeah,
getting
you're
that right?
right.
Because
You're right.
I sometimes pretend to be a CFO type of thing. So
And I will also say that HRAs are a huge time suck. An HSA for a business office is 1 entry per employee and we're done. And we don't have to we make probably 100 entries a week for our HRA plans to record those plans in our financial statements. It's huge. It's extremely time consuming.
Okay,
for
I'm gonna
it
go.
to-
I'm gonna go to Lisa, who's got her Zoom hand up.
Hand up.
Oh, and you just muted.
Oh, you're muted.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that. I guess my concern would be that the low hanging fruit, I think there's a general consensus, or maybe I'm wrong, that we need to reduce the number of plans. My concern becomes that that's all we do. And you lower the plan, you have 1, 2 plans, that's it. And we're just kicking the can down the road. It seems to me that a crisis, which we are currently facing in healthcare, is also an opportunity. And so if you don't hire a consultant now, and if you don't address these other issues now, I've just heard you say, well, we'll have it for next year. We'll just be down to 2 or down to 1. That really hasn't changed the fundamental problems that we're confronted with. And we have an opportunity to do that. Just a thought.
You're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm saying that I think we can make a decision about the number of plans without a consultant. I think it would be helpful to have a consultant to help us make the other decisions. And if we're able to make some of those other decisions in conjunction with a consultant, great. And if those decisions are made with enough time and meet the timeline, great. But I just don't want to put everything in that basket in terms of waiting to make some decisions based on the information that we have from a consultant. Because I think just going down from 4 to 2 plans, like getting rid of the gold plan is almost a no-brainer. There's so few people in it in comparison to our whole population. And again, I think what we would find, I bet if you were to
Cheryl, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I
Yep.
really want to hear
Okay.
from the other board members
Yes.
if
Sorry.
they support the approach, the 2-phase approach.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sure.
So Lance and Suzanne and any thoughts that you can share?
So when you talk about a 2-phase method, are you saying like we would reduce the number of plans and then implement those plans and then move on to another phase later? Is that what we're talking about?
It
Or are we
would
talking
be-
about
It would be
just agreeing to?
No, probably start both in parallel, right? So the 1 phase is, what can we do in the short term that all of us can agree on for implementation in 27? Is that right? We make the
28.
January of 28.
28. At the same time, start the process to engage a consultant and do the heavy lift for changes in 29.
Oh, 28.
Wait, so that's what I thought. Like the phase one is for 27 and the phase two with the consultant is for 28. But not do it in serial, not this and then that, but start both, but really so that we
So I
can
think,
potentially, and maybe I have the dates wrong, but to answer your
Yeah.
question, Lance, is there something that this board can agree on in the short term to have a positive impact and then get a consultant to do the heavy lift to have an additional positive impact?
Oh, so it does sound like what we're talking about is to make a decision and implement that decision into some healthcare plans without using a consultant at all. And then using a consultant to, I guess, look at what we've already done and then use the consultant to further it. I mean, it
that
just seems
you
that
could,
that seems
I
like
mean,
if it was to agree to say reduce the number of healthcare plans that we're going to offer, and then what we were, if we were going to agree to do that, and then we were going to get a consultant to come in and help us understand what that's going to look like and what's going to be the best options for that. That is something that I can kind of wrap my head around. I'm struggling to wrap my head around implementing something without, using a consultant at all, and then implementing it and using it, and then kind of going down the road a little bit and then coming up with something else. I mean, I don't really understand that.
Okay. Suzanne?
so my understanding is that I believe that everybody in the free world almost has said 4 plans is crazy. And 2 are compatible with either an HRA, HSA, and 2 are not. Is that correct? The gold and the two don't do it. So we know that we're going to keep at least one of the plans that is compatible with HRA, HSAs. And then we might want another choice, or maybe we want to keep, I don't know, the gold and the silver CDHP. I don't know, but we want to eliminate some. So I think the first step is for us to say, yes, we agree that we will have less than 4 plans. I mean, I think everybody thought they were crazy a number of years ago, but that's what we did. And then the other part of it is then we also should have someone giving us good information about maybe which are the 2 plans, which are the plan we keep, and what are if we do the Bobby Joe model. I'm just picking on you, Bobby Joe, about that. Is that all right? So are the deductibles in the right place? Are we covering the right things? That stuff I don't know. But I don't know if that helps you at all, Lance, or not. I wasn't
Well, I mean,
succinct. I
yeah,
started there, but I left.
I mean, it does, because if it's a matter of saying we're just going to go to 2 plans and agreeing to that, I can get behind that. But I don't understand how we would sort of implement that, like implement 2 plans, like which ones would be picked, and then we're going to decide which ones, we're going to use and what they're going to look like, and then implement that. And then there's another phase where what happens in the other phase,
So
what,
yeah.
because
So
we've already, seems like we've already done it, right? So
here's my thought, because I want to leave. We've got some contract work and some other work, and this is really important. And the reason why I asked is where you guys stand is we're not going to be able to make a decision here tonight. We're not going to be able to make a decision to go forward if Lance and Lisa are not comfortable with moving forward without a consultant. We're not going to be able to vote that way. So my suggestion is we have conversations outside this meeting, okay, on this subject. What are people comfortable? Are they, if Lance, you're not comfortable with implementing phase one before we understand phase two, I understand taking that position. So let's have additional discussions outside this meeting. And Lance and I can kind of bring those together and we can figure out, is there a path forward for a two-phase approach? And if not, then we go to a one phase with a consultant approach. And then can we move fast enough to get something next year or not? So thoughts on how to move, thoughts on what I just said, comments, concerns.
I agree. I agree with Lance in terms of it's just not clear to me how you do this. It's anyway, that's it.
I
Cheryl?
would ask that we get from Bobby Joe the number of subscribers that are in each of our 4 plans, because I think what we would find, I'm guessing, that like 80% of the people are in 2 plans. And that would make making a decision about, and it might even be more than 80% are in 2 plans. That might make that decision a little bit easier because it's so heavily weighted towards one plan, and then out of the next 3, I think it's pretty much, I don't know where we stand between the platinum and the silver.
So yeah, so what I hear, Cheryl, is actually less about, I mean, I think it's important the rationale of why we want to go from 4 to 2, but I think what would give Lisa and Lance some more comfort is explain how the two-phase approach would work. The where it overlaps, when the plan from phase 1 would go into effect, how the work in phase 2
Okay.
would integrate with phase 1. I think that's what I'm hearing is the discomfort.
Let me take a shot at that. Let me just take a shot at that. So we know January of 28 is
No,
when.
I'm sorry, not here right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just
You wanna do that?
outside the meeting.
So is that like part of the subcommittee meeting? Because do we?
Yeah, that would be
still
great
have
if you and
subcommittee?
Suzanne can work on that together. I love how you voluntold Suzanne for that. That was
Do
great.
we still have,
Actually, it was
right?
Lance's fault.
Yes.
My own party.
So our next time that we meet is when? September?
Be
Yes.
determined
So
in
this-
September.
This is what I'm concerned about. We will not have made a decision into even getting to September about whether or not we're using a consultant. So that's where I'm concerned about the slippage. Just saying that is
I
how I
understand.
see it
So,
happening.
so one thing that we can do is you can try and convince Lance and Lisa outside this meeting. And if you can line up everybody and then we can make a decision as a board in September, right? Instead of having another discussion. But I just don't think, we don't have the bandwidth, we don't have the time here. So we're going to have to
No.
do some work outside the board meeting.
I would also appreciate a design, a plan, or whatever it is, put in writing, because I think where we may all have the same idea, but we are talking and thinking about it. If the concept was written out, it would be so much easier for me.
Is there
Because
any,
this feels like negotiations, and I need to know that I understand what my colleagues on the school board side and the NEA side really think this is. It's like having the motion written out.
is there any benefit, real quick, not to belabor this, of running some survey to members to say we're thinking about going down on plans? Like,
I've heard over and over again from in meetings in at the VEHI, the VISBIT conference, in a meeting that included business managers and HR directors, that there are too many plans and we should reduce the number of our current plans to 2. They have clearly said that, and those are all the people, business managers and human resource directors and managers, whatever, that are working with people on a day-to-day basis in terms of administering all of these in the schools.
All right. Thank you for that. And Cheryl, you and I can huddle on this. I can help you document the proposal. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, especially Cheryl and Suzanne for taking this on. Okay. We got 27 minutes left. We've got to approve some contracts. Who's taking the lead on that?
I can.
All
So,
right.
So we made the changes suggested by the board last time. They were approved by the VISBIT board. This is in regard specifically to the VISBIT contract or service agreement. We added the scope of services. We added the code of conduct. We added a couple of things. The portion under section 3 was something that Jeff Fannin from Vermont NEA wanted to see, so we added that in there that really specified the fact that this can be renegotiated at the end of each term. So we think we captured everything that the group asked for, and so we would just request a motion to approve the updated contract as presented, or service agreement, excuse me.
Thank you for the additional tweaking of this language. I know we saw, Lance and I saw version 1, and this looks a little more lawyerly. Is that a word? The other question I had, the other thing I noted was around some strikeout, right? You had the scope of services.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Thank you.
Right.
I forgot about that part. Yeah. So that was specific to the president role. So with VISBIT backing out of that president role a couple of years ago, and because of the conflict of interest, fiduciary interest, we decided to just strike anything that mentioned the president portion as a specific role of VISBIT.
Okay. So I think when we sign this and publish it, just remove this.
Yes,
this is right.
This is just for you.
Okay, good.
This is so you could see what we did, but it'll
Great.
be cleaned
When
up.
we sign the actual thing, it's going to be all cleaned up.
Right,
Okay.
we'll re-letter it, get
Yep.
rid of the A and all that.
And what was the change here?
I just added the word VEHI.
Good.
Because it just said Vermont NEA.
Have a contract with itself. Okay.
I really
And now-
appreciate that, Bobby Joe, that you do highlight things like that and cross them out. You know, it really helps understand the changes that you've made.
Good.
So,
And then, I skipped
yeah.
ahead. All right.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Questions, comments on the VISBIT contract? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the VISBIT contract as specified in our board packet?
so move.
I have a second. Thank you, Lisa. Moved by Lance, seconded by Lisa. Any discussion? All approved, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Nicely done. Thank you. Vermont NEA contract. Oh, I skipped. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Here's the Vermont NEA contract.
I think it's just the amount that has changed, except for Bobby Joe's addition of the word VEHI and the addition of the dates.
And I did add the code of what is
Code
it?
of conduct.
Code of conduct. Yes, code of conduct as an appendix. So it wouldn't get lost like it did last time.
Any discussion about this?
I do have a question about it. So with regard to section 3 and the fees and payments, this contract specifies a specific amount that's paid in 4 quarterly installments. Whereas when you look at a similar section in the VISBIT contract, it talks about in section 4 of the VISBIT contract, how VISBIT performs a reconciliation of actual expenses. Any unused budgeted dollars will be returned to VEHI, or any additional amounts due will be billed to VEHI. and it's done upon the completion of the VISBIT financial audit. So I'm wondering why we don't have that same arrangement with on the NEA contract.
The only thing you're paying for is compensation and benefits based on a methodology. Like we don't run any programs out of here for VISBIT, like the wellness program, Chris's work, etc. You're just paying for a percentage of my total compensation and a fraction of that for my administrative assistant and our business manager. It's a pretty simple compensation formula, whereas VISBIT's a more complicated arrangement.
But couldn't we still have that same reconciliation process? So, it would, it could go either way. If that amount, for whatever reason, people change benefits and things like that, you may have somebody who's married, on a family plan and go down to a 2-person plan. We have that kind of thing happen all the time. It changes the cost of those benefits. And you have it the other way, that, somebody that's on a single gets married, and so now they're on a 2-person, and so the benefits increase. So I'm just wondering why, even though it's small and not as significant as what's involved with VISBIT, why we couldn't do that same process of reconciling it. So, depending on where it fell over and under, we just were truing it up.
Well, I guess that's something I got to bring back now to the executive director. I wish this had been raised last month when we were talking about this, so we could have made a decision about both contracts tonight. This is how we've always functioned, right? This has been the historical model. It has never been raised before the issue of reconciliation. There's really no dollars to go back to VEHI the way a reconciliation process works for VISBIT. Someone could be hired, yes, at a higher rate of compensation, let's say an administrative assistant, which would then require, under your system, Cheryl, an additional compensation for Vermont NEA, right? And in fact, that has happened in the past, and it just never changed anything. We just ran with the contract that was enforced. That was the simplest way to do it. So for simplicity purposes, this is how we've always done it. I don't know what's more to say, to be honest.
Can I just add that we just added that to our contract? It's been our practice to do it, but we actually just added, that's why it's highlighted in yellow, is we put that in there specifically. So it wasn't in there as a comparison last month, in all fairness.
Oh, that's what, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't see it. Okay.
Yeah, it just seems nitpicky to me that, and I mean, are we going to have them track their hours, and then we're going to see how many hours they work?
don't know.
It's just,
That's not what I'm
it just seems
suggesting
like
at all.
it just seems nitpicky to me
No,
to do that.
I don't think so. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. It's just you at some point at the end of a year, at the end of the fiscal year, say, this is what it actually costs. This is what you paid, and money goes one way or the other.
Chris?
I would just say it's really a protection for both parties. I agree, Mark, it's never been done that way. And your system is much more simplistic than VISBIT's, and that's why there's more of a need on the VISBIT side to do it. But for example, if say your administrative assistant, or say you were to terminate mid-year and someone else comes in, we do have a principle that says, the Vermont NEA and VISBIT will not make any money off from VEHI. We do it for cost. So, truing that up to say, were these still the same salary and benefits that we expected? And, you know, that could go either way. Like if you left and they hired someone else in at a higher rate of pay, then VEHI would need to give more money. And the, you know, the opposite's true. If say your admin left and you hired somebody with very little experience, so you hired them as a more entry level position, then they might make less. I don't think it's cumbersome.
I
I
wasn't
mean,
suggesting it is. It's just
no.
been the historical practice, and
Yeah, yeah.
I just
So-
I'd like to get this done tonight, so I don't have to go back to other people again.
Well,
Frankly,
here's my suggestion, because I have an allergic reaction. Sorry, Mark. What I hear a lot in my business. This is the way we've always done it, and it's never a good enough reason if we're agents of change like we are here on the board. At the same time, this is a contract that's up for July 1st. So we're pretty late in the game. So my suggestion is that we essentially table this. And Cheryl, if you're really, I understand, totally understand why you're looking to do this as a fiduciary response, you know, responsibility for the VEHI organization. So my suggestion is look into this, have a conversation for next year, and
Okay.
and approve the contract as written. Because otherwise we're going to have to, if we go back and forth, I think it's a significant set of work, and then we're going to have to come back before the end of June as a board to approve it.
I would be fine with that.
Okay.
I just, I guess we just want to make sure we bookmark it so that we don't lose track of making that change.
that's fine. That's
In
fine.
advance of our conversation next year on this.
Okay. And I'm going to write this down for, so there's always every June-ish, right?
Actually, I think we want to do it sooner than that.
I'm going to put it for March. That
Okay.
Or, yeah, you know, we could even do it in October or December, whenever one of our meetings are, and just
We can
clean,
make it, yes.
clean the deck so that we know what we're doing. And we don't have this issue
I
again.
agree. I agree. I've got no qualms with that.
Can I just make one more comment? So it seems to me that what we do is, and correct me if I'm wrong, we contract with Vermont NEA to receive services. That's what we pay the $205,000 to get these services. How they provide them, you know, whether it's how much they're paying somebody, how much, you know, how that all works. It seems to me that that's their thing. Our thing is just that we get the services that we need from Vermont NEA, and we pay X number of dollars for it. It seems like we're now getting into Vermont NEA's, you know, how much they pay people, what their benefits are, and, you know, we're trying to attach a percent to it. Like, we're only going to pay X percent of whatever they're making. And that's how much we're going to pay. And then we would reconcile it at the end of the year. It just seems to me like we're just getting involved in somewhere that's
Oh.
just kind of bizarre to
So
me.
then are you okay with Bizbit saying the same thing?
Okay, guys, we're gonna table this and have it as a separate discussion point, because we're running out of time. We got some business.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Next up. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. We have to approve it. Any further discussion on the NEA contract? May I have a motion to approve the NEA contract as presented? Suzanne made the motion. Cheryl seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion passes unanimously. Next contract, Blue Cross of Vermont.
Okay, this one's going to be a little more complicated than we had originally thought, and the reason for it is as follows. And before I talk about the specifics of the Blue Cross contract proposal, and remember, we're on a fiscal year service agreement schedule with Blue Cross, runs from July 1 to June 30th. And before we look at what's of concern to us as a management team with the upcoming renewal, a few months back, Bobby Joe, John, and I had some conversations about doing a deep analytical dive into our service agreement with Blue Cross, something that hasn't been done in some period of time, looking to see where there may be gag clauses or hidden fees or charges we may not be fully aware of, get an analysis of this payment integrity agreement we have with Blue Cross, whereby they take a percentage of savings that accrues by virtue of identifying fraud, waste, and abuse, and particular problems with claims editing. Anyways, we had agreed to do that analysis, and we had agreed also on a person to do it. And then, because of legislative developments and reference-based pricing in particular, uncertain about where all of that would land, and it could have implications for our contract with Blue Cross, we decided that we would table that analysis. So just keep that in mind as I address now what's coming up with Blue Cross. So on Monday, Blue Cross presented us with some changes to our service agreement for FY26. And some of the changes are significant enough and potentially complicated or complex to require further analysis and deliberation by the management team before we can sufficiently explain them to you and advise you about their validity or their usefulness to both parties. In other words, we got this contract proposal a little late in the game. The contract expires in 2 weeks. And given what's been proposed, we don't feel like we are in a position to respond to Blue Cross adequately and comprehensively by the end of this month. So the first thing we're going to recommend tonight is that you authorize us to secure a contract renewal extension with Blue Cross in order to give us as a management team sufficient time to do the contract analysis and reflection that we think is essential before we sign another agreement. The second piece of this comes back to the conversation Bobby, Joe, John, and I had back in March or April. And that is, in light of what has happened recently, and excuse me, in light of what Blue Cross has proposed with certain changes, we think it's imperative that we actually do an analysis of the contract using an outside vendor. The person that we had agreed to use back in March and April. There's no longer any legislative complications around that. We know where the legislation is. It won't have any direct impact on our budget, our contract with Blue Cross, at least not in the short term. So we could follow up with an analysis, and we're pretty certain we can get that analysis done in about a month's time based on a conversation I had with this prospective vendor. So we would ask for 2 motions tonight. One is authorizing us to secure a contract renewal with Blue Cross of a period of time that's in the motion, and then authorizing us to move forward with a contract analysis with the vendor that the 3 of us are comfortable with. I'll pause there and take some questions if there are any.
Lance?
Move that the management team secure a renewal extension on FY25 service agreement with Blue Cross of Vermont to provide sufficient time for the team and the VEHI board, A, to analyze the carrier's latest proposed changes to the FY26 service agreement, and B, for the management team to subsequently to negotiate mutually satisfactory terms for submission to the VEHI board for review and approval.
Second it.
Discussion or questions? Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Lance?
I move that the management team contract with a health benefits analyst of their choosing to conduct a thorough review of the terms and conditions of VEHI's FY25 service agreement, including its payment integrity component with Blue Cross of Vermont and of the recommended changes to that agreement by the carrier for FY 26, and to advise the team and the VEHI board on potential revisions and improvements to the agreement.
Second it?
Thank you, Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, guys. I'm very supportive of doing this carefully because that's no offense to our Visbit and NEA friends. It's the most important contract we have.
Agreed.
Okay. Next up is amendment to Gallagher Benefit Services. Wait, this is an amendment?
Yeah, it's just, each year we amend the contract with this information. It's basically just it's actually not every year, it's every 2 years. Everything is the same with this, with the exception of the things that are highlighted in red. The new fiscal years, as well as the dates that have changed. The agreement amount has not changed. They're keeping their fee at the same amount. Lisa did note when they updated the signature line, they had initially removed my name and put Tracy's there because Tracy was the last one to sign it. But I have since updated it per Lisa catching that to add Mike Fisher's name there. So just again, no changes. Again, this is to our compliance group, that our help desk support that we contract with to help our groups with COBRA and Medicare reporting and things like that.
Questions or comments for Bobby Joe?
Just quick question, Bobby Joe. How are you finding the utilization on Gallagher? Because I know they were highly utilized when, all the healthcare reform was taking place. We made all the big changes that we made. I know personally in my district, from time to time, we do access them, but I wonder,
I
do
actually
you get
have,
information about utilization on them?
yeah, it's actually due to me. She received it and then said, I need to edit it because I think something's wrong. She just sent me that while we were on this meeting, actually. So I can send that out once I receive it. Our fee our fee for them has gone down considerably over the last few years, from where our kind of the high was when they were doing a lot of work for us. So we're not paying them as much as we used to, but I think it's like 18,000 a quarter or something like that.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll take a motion to approve the amendment as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Cheryl. Second. Thank you, Suzanne. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. So topics for next time. We are trying to get September. Is that our next meeting? Or we have,
That's what we're trying to do. It's an ad hoc meeting. It's not our scheduled meeting.
okay. All right. And so in that September meeting, what are the, since we don't have to do it based on our work plan, right? Our work plan is June and then October. So what are the topics? Plan
We're going to-
redesign?
Yeah, and where we're at specifically with with our rate increase that's needed and the work that we need to do for DFR to make sure our reserves are
Oh, yes.
where they need to be. So I think at that point, when we know more about where the rates are coming in at, we'll have a better idea if there's anything urgent that needs to be done.
Okay.
Will we
What-
have anything on the next gen PBM?
I'm not sure if we will by that point. What do you think, Mark?
By September? Bobby, Joe, and I will probably be speaking with Carrie really soon about getting the RFP process in motion.
Yeah,
So
so
I
if
think
we
we'll-
have, if we have
yeah.
something, we'll put it
Yeah.
on the agenda.
I mean,
Yep.
I'm just, again, could we have a response to the RFP by the September meeting? Because
I don't
That's a
think we
really
could-
good question.
Yeah, I don't
Bobby?
think that they'll have the opportunity to analyze all the answers because they're sending it out to, if there's 5 PBMs that we're looking at, including our current, that's going to be a lot of data to go back through. And she said she would take, I think it was like 6 to 8 weeks. She
Yeah,
would need
that's
to
right.
really analyze all the data. So
So
It's
we'll
not
also-
out of the question, Cheryl, but it's probably a stretch, as Bobby Joe's alluding to.
right.
All right. I think we're
Um,
good. Oh, Jonathan.
the GLP and the Blue Cross contract, we'll have to do that at some point. That might be a special.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion of adjournment.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Oh my God. Everybody wants to do. I saw Andrew and then Lance is the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Who's
Thank-
opposed? Nobody.
Thanks, everybody.
Motion passes. We're adjourned 6 o'clock. Thank you, everybody. Great work this evening.
Nice job,
Well-
y'all.
Meeting.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Meeting.
Take
Have a good
care.
night.